Hey guys, what's up? Dingo Crikey here with another commentary video. This one's topic: will the figures from the Robots in Disguise 2015 toy line be of any value? So this is a bit of a different video than the ones I usually do. It's not so much of an informative topic as it is kind of an inquisitive one because it's something I'm kind of wondering about myself. And it's kind of for people who might just like the novelty of owning valuable Transformers, people who are just curious about it, or if you're interested in reselling, whether in Transformers in particular, or you're just someone who does reselling, maybe even for a living, and you happen to come across this video. Maybe this can help you in regards to Transformers. But like I said, I'm kind of speculating myself. But as for the main question, are Robots in Disguise figures going to be worth buying and keeping in their boxes for future profit, or is there even going to be any novelty in actually owning them, as is most prevalent with lines like G1, but as some lines get older such as Energon, some of the figures gain their own novelty, whereas some really don't. Is Robots in Disguise going to be a line where no matter what it is, in most cases it's going to be kind of useless, unless you don't care about their value and just think they're really awesome, which is okay though. With a line like RID, kind of hard to understand that sentiment, which brings to mind the question of, why I'm wondering about their worth. A lot of it has to do with the fact that RID's toys, as with everything else about the series, has been met with such mixed reception. Like the show or hate it, I think it would be pretty hard to deny that the overall response has been meh, if even that in some cases. And the viewership has been a little bit on the low side. I have a video on that if you're interested. It should be linked in this one. I mean, also the toys are more kid than collector friendly. They're simplistic. Their color schemes are not only really basic, but they're really lacking in paint apps. So it leaves the figures looking pretty bland. The designs have also been criticized for being unoriginal. The toys have kibble problems, especially ones like Steeljaw, and even the boxes are generic with no instructions contained in them, just pasted on the back there. So the line has its problems in itself, but it's also kind of up against the Combiner Wars line, which has appealed to collectors, and of course traditionally Transformers that are combiners almost always seem to go up in price. With Robots in Disguise figures, a lot of people think they're crap that are basically a low-budget means to fill up the shelves with something with the Transformers label and, of course, supporting the new cartoon. With all of this, for me, I'm not interested in collecting the line for hobby purposes. I don't own any out-of-box figures from the line. I'll probably get Sideswipe, maybe Jazz, and I'm sure there'll be a few other characters down the line. But with the line as a whole, I'm not really interested. And even without opening them, I'm kind of wondering, are they even worth the money? Is there any value in these guys? Still, I think we have to remember something like Transformers Animated, which is kind of the closest thing we had to the whole RID experience. Initially, Animated was met with probably worse reactions than RID is receiving, but I would say at least half of the line's toys have gone up significantly in value. The most extreme example I could think of is Animated Deluxe Blur. Now go look this thing up on eBay if you don't believe me. This dude was like $10, $10.99 at retail price. Now on eBay, you'll be lucky if you could find him under $80. Most run for like $100 as far as I've seen. Fortunately, my brother does own this figure, but on the downside, we don't have any extras that are still in box, and I'm kicking myself to this day for that because I remember seeing this guy in stores quite often, so it wasn't like he was super rare, at least not in my area. Still, he became super valuable. However, there are some differences and things to take into consideration. Animated's show surpassed expectations for many viewers and generated a sort of cult following. Also, many of the toys were much better than people expected. They were a lot more durable, some of them exemplified great show accuracy, their designs were unique and had a lot of show accuracy, and there were of course a lot of unique, really quirky characters in the show, which people might have wanted to get toys of. Now, despite guys like Blur, there are some figures that really aren't that valuable. Take into account a dude like Deluxe Class Ratchet. You could probably get a deal on him and get him cheaper than retail price. Now, of course, it is really hard to determine what makes certain figures go up in value and others not. Of course, a guy like Blur does have the benefits of having less screen time but being therefore way more special with the appearances he had in the show. He didn't have as many little knick-knacky figures released on the side, but you can look at other characters such as Prow had pretty much the same role as Ratchet, and that figure's worth a decent amount of money, though not as much as Blur, probably about the average for the price raise of animated figures. And this guy had a lot of different versions made of his character, including a re-released version of him with basically a suit of armor. So in a line like animated, it kind of depended on which character it was, on whether or not they were going to be valuable in the future. And I'm sure there are other factors that go into the worth of these guys, but there's something that I gotta mention if you're looking into this stuff, and that is that I've noticed a lot of the fat, stocky, kind of, for lack of a better word, dorky looking characters rarely go up in price. The animated line in particular has a few good examples. Take Snarl, remember he was the Triceratops Dinobot. He really isn't that valuable on eBay today, and he didn't have all these re-released versions of his character. The Deluxe was the main one. I don't even think he got that many repaints, but he's just not valuable. Other characters are Voyager Lugnut and Voyager Bulkhead. Even though those were fairly popular characters in the show, neither of those figures have much worth, which is good news if you just want to add them to your collection at this point. But if you invested in those guys, it's probably not such a good sign. So a personal observation would be to stay away from the clunky figures, especially if they look pretty derp like Ratchet, you know, with the pot belly. Yeah, I don't think that's going to do well for him. So whether RID figures are going to be worth anything, well, we'll probably come across at least one character from the main line who will be worth something. Who knows, maybe he'll be Legion Class Fixit or something. But in comparison with animated, Robots in Disguise doesn't have the advantage of the toys overall being received pretty well. As far as I know, people haven't really been crazing about them. Even people like them say they're pretty average and pretty basic. Also, the show's been considered mediocre, but what can we look at as far as the toys individually and what they might be worth? And I've come up with a few factors. I'm sure there are a lot more, but this is what I've got. One of them seems to be the rarity of the mold. That's pretty much like if you have someone such as Animated Blur who was the only rendition of that mold. So obviously this is people's only chance to get it. It might be more valuable. Also the rarity of the character. This kind of goes along with how many versions have there been made within that line, but also in general. Take a guy like Energon Shockblast. He's pretty expensive on eBay, and at the time he was the first Shockwave we had gotten in like 20 years or so. In regards to detail and color scheme, show accuracy, that was also considered a really good figure and a good representation of Shockwave in general, so this isn't always going to apply, but if it's done well, it definitely seems to help a character. Going along with that, there's the representation of the show counterpart in particular. When figures don't seem to do this so well, even if they're based off of a really popular character such as Armada Starscream, they probably aren't going to rack up any dollars. Or it's going to be like, so what, you have him, he wasn't a good representation anyways. And then you have the overall perception of the toy. Now, this seems to have a ton to do with what's going to be worthy in the future, especially if you have a toy that is received very well and is rare. But reception alone could have a lot to do with a figure's value. And you could probably use your own intuition a little bit, but you'll probably get a lot of help in this by talking to other Transformers fans, looking on message boards, videos such as this, to figure out which figures are in fact the really popular ones. As far as our ID goes, I don't see it looking that good in these regards. Take Bumblebee for example. Yeah, he's a really popular character right now, but you'll see him as often as you see Elsa and Olaf advertised on things. If you miss out on Robots in Disguise Bumblebee, chances are you're going to have a chance to get a repaint of that mold. Not only that, but they're going to make 1 million more Bumblebees, even from that line alone based on that show design. And the figure itself is pretty bland as far as I can see. Everyone who reviews it pretty much says it's not necessarily a bad figure, but there's nothing unique about it, and it seems to be regarded as very forgettable. Then you have someone like Deluxe Class Strongarm. While female Transformers are generally more valuable, we are seeing more of them recently. Still, Strongarm is a unique character, but even then, I don't think she's an incredibly popular one, and I don't think the figure's being received super well, so maybe she'll be worth a little bit more than Bumblebee. Strongarm's kind of one that I don't know about. She could go super high in price as far as the deluxe figure goes, but I don't really see that happening. Steeljaw? No way. I just think the quality of that figure is totally going against it. The character's already kind of like a poor man's Megatron, and the figure is just really atrocious. If anything, maybe he's gonna score points for being one of the few Decepticons in the line, but I just don't see that the figure's good enough to warrant a high value. Grimlock? No, I don't think Grimlock's going to go too high in price. Now, the figure, originally I hated it. Now, the more I see, it doesn't look that bad. Though Grimlock's a popular and well-known Transformers character, he never really seems to go high in price or be considered valuable, even when we didn't see Grimlock for a while, like when we had the Energon figure. Other than G1 and G2, I can't think of a version of Grimlock that has actually been valuable. Plus, this guy's got the problems that the other robots in disguise figures have, being small, simplistic, and the small is a problem for him because he's pretty big in the show, so I'm not seeing Grimlock being that valuable. Optimus, this is kind of a hard one because some Optimuses go pretty high in price eventually, and you'll have people going crazy to get their hands on them in the future. So I just don't know with this guy because he doesn't seem like he's a great figure. I actually own this guy, but I'm just keeping him in the box. He doesn't look awful, but he's pretty dinky looking. His proportions are definitely not show accurate. Still, he's Optimus, and at least in my area, this guy's pretty uncommon to see, so we might have that going for him if it's true in other areas as well, that they aren't putting as much of him on retail. He might end up being more valuable, and the same goes for Drift. We haven't seen a lot of him in the show yet, but he's another one. I don't think he's going to be worth a whole lot. Maybe if he is kind of scarce, that will help him out. But his design's really bland, his transformation's pretty simplistic. Now, Drift is a fairly popular character in Transformers lore, but a lot of people don't like these newer renditions of him. So I wouldn't be surprised if this guy didn't just end up being a little bit more valuable than his original retail worth. Jazz, I doubt it. We get lots of versions of Jazz. Some of them do end up being pretty valuable, but those are usually the better figures. Ones like animated Jazz, despite Jazz's popularity, he's not worth that much, either the Freeway or the original version. This guy, he's already kind of a remold of Prime Bumblebee as far as I know. There's a lot of debate about that, but he sure looks like one. With this guy, I think it kind of depends on whether he's going to end up being a popular character or not, because maybe he could turn out to be someone like Blur, kind of makes a few show appearances and ends up getting a large amount of popularity. I doubt that's the case for this guy, though. Then that leads me to the last one I'll be discussing. That's Deluxe Class Sideswipe. This guy, I think, has the most potential of going up in worth. For one, he seems to be the most popular of the show so far. He's my favorite character personally, but amongst other people it seems to be true. He's a unique rendition of Sideswipe. We're kind of used to either the movie version of him or the G1 version. This is a unique version of him, and he's kind of a unique character altogether. We don't see many Transformers in cartoons behave the way he does. His design is a really cool looking one in the show, though be it simple, and while the toy doesn't do the best job at mimicking it, it still looks pretty close to Sideswipe's show likeness, and we'll have to see if he's going to turn out to be a rare character or not. Like I said, it seems like Wave 2 figures aren't being really put out at mass retail. Maybe that's going to be the case with Sideswipe and Jazz 2. I guess we'll have to see. But if you're thinking of investing in anyone or you want to get any figure from this line, I would think Sideswipe's probably your best bet. He does look like a good figure in himself too. So, all of that to say, as far as I can see, the Robots in Disguise line doesn't seem like it's going to have many valuable figures, and definitely doesn't seem like it would be a sound investment for resellers. Maybe if you're looking to just buy this stuff, especially if it's on clearance and flip it on eBay, you could probably make a little bit of money, but if you're looking at long-term stuff that you're going to hold over and then sell like 6 years later, I don't think Robots in Disguise is your best bet. But as I said in the beginning, that's just what I can tell so far. I'm kind of wondering about this myself, so you guys can leave your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you think about Robots in Disguise toys and their future worth? Do you see signs of hidden potential? Maybe it's going to be one of those things when they're almost out of stores, everyone's just wanting them all of a sudden? Or maybe you're thinking they're going to be less than even their retail price in about 10 years. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, along with any other topic suggestions you have. That's all I have to say for this one. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more regular Transformers news and commentary. See you guys soon. Have a good one.